got something. I guess while we're waiting on Tanya. Um, when you when you're dealing with buyers, do you guys normally make sure that they're have some funding in place prior to like actively working with them? Or do you spend the time looking for businesses for them without ensuring that they have some type of funds available? I have a guy that wants 100% seller financing.
Well,
Yeah, I told him
that's
that's probably not going to happen. Um, so I'm introducing him to some lenders now. But I was just curious because I'm new to this. How do you guys handle working with buyers? I know most people want to work with sellers.
well, I'll say something. I don't know anyone else can jump right in, but of course, everyone wants something for nothing. And if they don't have any skin in the game, then they're not a very good buyer to begin with, number one. Um, but I mean, that's not to say that people without money aren't legitimate buyers. But they have to bring something to the game. I mean, they're not gonna. Why would your seller loan them money? Um, why would they do that? That's effectively what's happening, Terrence, is your seller is the bank now.
Right.
And you also would become the bank. I guess you're not going to get it your commission, right? Because if they don't have any money, you have no commission, and you would have to take a note for your commission. Are you willing to loan them money?
Wow. You know what? Didn't even think of that.
I mean, do you give money to your kids?
No.
Do they pay you back? Uh,
Yeah, I just never I didn't until you said it like that. I did it makes sense.
so to answer your first question, though, which would everyone would want to know this, would do you check out the buyer's financial before you entertain them? Uh, I think you ask them a few questions and you find out, you listen to them answer the questions and how much money would you be willing to put down? But in no case that I'm aware of would a seller want to do 100% financing. Does anyone have a different conclusion there than I do? I don't think anyone would want to. I wouldn't want to do that if I was selling my business that I had built over the years, and I'm going to give it to this newbie that has no money and maybe no prospects.
Yeah,
But
and I really didn't think the 100% financing would fly. Um, and again, this is my first time working with a buyer, so I just want to know if I should
so,
how
Terrence,
thoroughly.
let me ask you a question, Terrence. Are you representing the buyer? Is he looking for a business?
Yes.
So why are you representing this buyer with no money?
Well, matter of fact, at 2 o'clock after I get off this call, I'm meeting with him to sign a buyer rep agreement, and these are things that I need to hash out so I can talk to him um, like I'm semi sort of smart uh,
Well,
when I start talking to him about his finances.
I would not sign anything with him. As I think Alan's on this call. Alan, why don't you tell him why you wouldn't sign a rep agreement with a buyer that has no money? Can you hear me, Alan? I don't know if
I
Alan.
don't know if he can. I can hear you, Dick. This is Tanya. I'm back. Sorry, guys. My camera is not going to come on today, so I don't know why, but I'll have to deal with that later. um, I think in general, business sales, you're always going to need some money down. I mean, a business owner that's built something up, that's wanting to retire, or even if they're not, they're just wanting to move on to something else, they're going to want to see that the buyer has some skin in the game. And a buyer who has no money to put down on a business typically is not going to be a good investment of your time, because there's, there might be one out of what, 50,000 business owners that say, hey, if you want to come on and work for me, I'll for a period of time, I'll train you to run the business and transfer it at some point in the future, but you're going to be working for free to learn the business. So one thing you have to remember is that your time is the most valuable asset that you have. And every time you're saying yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So if you're saying yes and obligating yourself, a contract obligates you to spend time trying to find a business for that buyer, that's a whole lot of time that you could be spending with a seller who actually wants to sell their business, or with somebody else who has money, who's actively seeking, maybe a company that's actively seeking to expand through acquisition or something like that, where you have a much higher probability of closing a transaction in the future with that person. But you don't get compensated for getting a contract signed, right? I mean, we can all go out and get that's the old school business brokerage. The way they used to train business brokers was, you go out and you want to get 20 listings within 30 days, definitely. And you want to maintain 20 or more listings at all times. And who cares about the quality? But what that does is that burns your time and energy, because now you're obligated to do all these things for all these contracts that really have a very low probability of ever resulting in compensation to you. So in terms of best practices, you're much better off to try and qualify the buyers and the sellers that you're working with, to make sure that there's going to be a deal to be closed at some point in time in the future. Otherwise, you're just not going to, you're not going to make any money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I just want to know, how hard should I grill him?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, there's a couple basic questions you can just ask them over the phone. How much money, how much liquid cash do you have available to put down on a business?
Hmm.
And, I can tell you, years ago, we had a buyer profile form that we would send out to buyers, and then we'd check them. We'd send them out with the NDA, a confidentiality agreement. And one came back and the agent looked at it, and it's asked, how much money do you have, cash available to put down on a business? And the buyer put down 100. And so the agent assumed it was 100K, because the business that person was inquiring about was like $1 million or 800,000 or somewhere in that range. And so when we get the buyer on the phone and have a conversation with him, it turned out that no, the buyer had $100 to put down on a business, and thought they were going to be able to get this 800,000 or $1 million business with that. So, it's up to us as brokers to educate sellers, but also to educate buyers. And if they don't have funds available to put down, I mean, they're going to need, these days, SBA guidelines are pretty lenient. You're only looking at 10% down. I mean, 10 years ago, it was 25% down that we were looking for all the time. If it was an $800,000 business, you wanted to see 200 grand, but now all you need is 80. So it's a lot easier to find financing now, but you still have to have something. And if the buyer doesn't have any skin in the game, if they don't have any money that they're putting into it, then how motivated are they going to be to make sure the business is successful? Because they have nothing at risk. So that's why sellers, if a seller's retiring, they only want to finance. Well, most of them don't want to carry paper at all. But if they need to for whatever reason, because a lender's not going to provide enough of the loan, or because the buyer wants the seller to still have skin in the game to make sure that the transition, that they get help during the transition, and that the seller stays on call and answers the phone when the buyer calls, usually that's only 10 to 15% of the purchase price. There are times when, because the business financials are a wreck, they don't qualify for third-party financing. But even then, your seller typically is only going to carry maybe 50%. Because again, you know, they don't want to have more invested in the business than the buyer does and then turn over control to the buyer. Because then everything's out of their hands.
Well, it was probably a red flag when he told me he has all of his money, or most of his money, tied up in the 2 businesses that he has currently, which is why he said, I'm looking for another business, but I want to see if I can find a 100% seller financing business. And I told him that the odds on that happening were probably slim to none. And then he went to explaining that he does have some cash, like I think he said $70,000 cash, and his budget, he wants his budget to be around 600,000, so he doesn't want to go over that. Looking at service businesses, he called it boring businesses, like car washes or laundromats or something like that. So I had already in mind that I was going to link him up with a lender anyway, and just ensure that he had at least his 10% cash. But
Yeah,
that was one question. That was just something I wanted to make sure that I wanted to be able to approach him and make sure I'm not wasting my time. But
yeah, and there is a way for, actually, with the new SBA guidelines, the SOP that came out August 1st, it is possible to get 100% financing on business acquisition loans, but that is when you're buying when you have a company that's expanding through acquisition. It's an expansion loan. So if you're dealing with somebody who already owns several laundromats and they want to buy another, as long as they can qualify for the financing and the cash flow is sufficient to cover the debt service, they literally can get 100% loan, because it's same kind of business. They're already in it. You know, electrical contractor wants to expand through acquisition, a general, a CPA wants to buy another CPA firm. I mean, all of those can be done with 100% financing now through SBA, as long as the cash flow is there to cover the debt service. So those expansion loans and that rule change came out effective August 1st. But that is very different from 100% seller financing. 100% seller financing is a unicorn. So, it may exist. It may exist somewhere, but it's the needle in the haystack, and probably not worth the time and effort, because, well, yeah, it's just, I'll just leave it at that.
Well,
So-
Terrence, I've got a comment, Terrence. I mean, as this guy who owns 2 other businesses, ask him if he would allow somebody to come in and offer him 0 down on a business. I mean, put him in, like, turn the tables on him and ask him. I mean, that just doesn't make financial sense to a lot of people. I'm sure
Right.
it would make financial sense to him.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could I make a comment here? I had
Of
$1
course.
million business one time as a construction company. We were doing $1 million annual. I would have given it to somebody if they would have taken over the debt and all the liabilities. I would have gladly let them have the business. So there are situations where that's possible. However, there's downside to getting a business for nothing too. So, but it did have a lot of revenue, right? And the top line is really not representative of the bottom line if you've been in business. I mean, I was making more money than General Motors for a while.
Well, and it had a lot of debt, and the problem with handing over a business to somebody when there is a lot of debt is that debt personally guaranteed by you or by the seller? So, you know, if you're, again, it goes back to, if it's personally guaranteed and you hand over the business, it has that debt, you're still on the hook for it as a seller. So, you know, how much, it might be nice to have this buyer come in and take over operations. And if it's somebody you know, or somebody who has a successful background, turnarounds or something like that, then that's great. But if not, it's pretty risky if if you have a lot of debt and it's all personally guaranteed.
I.e. tax debt. If you have like employee debt, tax debt, that's a non-starter. You know, there are certain things that you can't just give to somebody else and have them take them over. And they follow you like a bad penny. And so you got to be careful if you're trying to get rid of a business now. You know, if you're buying a business, you know, if you're astute, you could maybe buy something, get something, take it off someone else's plate and maybe do it. But you have to be careful. Like Tanya says, there's some really hidden issues that are really problematic.
Now, one of the businesses that he owns, he says it's a staffing business. So maybe we could find, and I'm not even thinking about the financing, seller financing, but just businesses that might be up this guy's alley, like maybe by looking at a book of business for another staffing agency, or he also owns a commercial cleaning franchise. So maybe find businesses that would be close to those, or
Yeah, but I think your point of connecting him with a lender and having a lender, you know, kind of qualify him is a good idea, because that's going to save you a lot of time.
that was my thought.
Yeah.
Like it's like when I did residential real estate, you don't even put them near your car or even talk to them really until they have a pre-approval letter. I know I didn't.
Yeah.
I still don't. But that was my train of thought. Hook him up with a lender and have him, you know, get some type of pre-approval, see where he is financially.
Yep,
Okay,
absolutely.
I think that's what I'll do.
All
And
right.
I know you had sent that, or you had sent me the SBA financial sheet. Is that, and I sent it to him. Is that something I should have him work on, or is that something that the lender would have him work on, or should he prepare it prior to talking to a lender?
Well, it's going to be similar. So the lenders typically put their own brand on it, but all of them are going to use that something very similar to that SBA personal financial statement. So I would just go ahead and have him fill that out, because that way he can submit it to a couple different lenders,
Okay.
and they can all look at that. So yeah, I mean, I think that with qualifying buyers, you know, you definitely want to ask them how much liquid cash they have to put down on a business. if a buyer is inquiring about a specific type of business or is looking for a specific type of business, how much background do they have in that industry? You know, what's their background and experience? Have they ever been a business owner before? In this case, obviously he owns a couple of businesses. How are those businesses doing? Are they profitable? Are they not? You know, why is he, I do know people who are looking to build a portfolio of businesses the same way that other people build portfolios of real estate. When they're looking to do a portfolio of businesses, then you have to ask them how much time are they going to be able to allocate to a given business? Because if this guy already owns a couple other businesses, is he looking for something that's absentee run? I mean, probably absentee or semi-absentee, because it sounds like he's not going to own or operate. And we know that most of the small businesses in that $600,000 range and below, or, you know, below a few million, actually, most of those are owner operated. So, you know, in terms of qualifying, that would be another question I would ask is how much time do you intend to or do you have available to allocate to a business? You know, is there what specific industries? He said services. Great. Service is a very broad category. You know, are there any specific industries he wants to steer clear of?